Well, the Howe Institute is calling on the Liberal government to make steeper cuts to program spending as it expects Canada's deficit to top $92 billion this fiscal year.
All right, so for more on this, let's bring in CTV's Jeremy Sharon, who is live in Ottawa. Good morning, Jeremy. So what do we know about the targeted defense spending?
Well, Courtney and Jen, what we know is that this new report from the Howe Institute, a think tank, a well-regarded think tank, shows just how much reaching some of these defense spending targets, NATO defense spending targets, would cost the federal government. This latest report from Howe indicates, as you've just touched on, that this fiscal year alone, reaching that 2% target of defense spending, 2% of GDP, would cost or will require the government to reach a deficit of $92 billion. Further to that, during the NATO summit last week, the federal government and Canada committed to a new target of 5% of GDP spending within the next decade. The Howe Institute estimates that by 2035, reaching that 5% target could mean that defense spending alone could add $68.4 billion to Canada's deficit. That is a significant amount of money. And as you've touched on, the Howe Institute is pushing the federal government to make further cuts, program spending cuts, and find ways to make up some of that money. A separate report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives looks at what it would cost to cut to the public service as much as the federal government promised to do so, or the Liberals promised to do so during the campaign. Mark Carney and the Liberals promised in 2026, 2027 to reduce the public services spending by $6 billion and then to further reduce it to $13 billion by 2028, 2029. The promise was to do so through better efficiencies in the public service. The Canadian Centre for Public Alternatives says it would require 24% cut in public service spending to eventually reach that $13 billion cut. It will be very difficult, this report indicates, to do so without actually cutting the public service and some of the programs, rather than just doing so through efficiency. So these two reports from two separate institutions are providing a pretty unique outlook at what the federal government's finances could look like if we commit to that promise of reaching 5% of defense spending eventually, but also if the federal government, if the Liberals do follow through on that promise to make significant spending cuts to the public service.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jeremy, of course, the big question is how will all this spending impact our deficit?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that is kind of the big question. How do you balance both out? And if you look at the numbers that we just outlined, even if you do manage to cut, even if you do manage to cut $13 billion of public service spending, that is not enough to make up for the significant increase in defense spending that we are expecting to see. Again, we're looking at a number of $68.4 billion added to the deficit by 2035 for defense spending alone. The federal government is going to have to find further efficiencies, is going to have to make further cuts, or accept that they're going to be borrowing more money moving forward to reach these targets.
Mm-hmm. All right, CTV's Jeremy Sharon joining us live from Ottawa. Jeremy, thanks so much for the latest on those studies. We appreciate it.
Thank you.